Debt servicing in Nigeria has consumed about 1.24 trillion naira in the first quarter of 2023, according to recent data released by the Debt Management Office. This represents nearly a third of Nigeria's total budget for the year. The high level of debt servicing is causing concern among Nigerians who are already grappling with the high inflation rate in the country, rising costs of living, and of course, a struggling economy. Many are questioning whether the country can sustain this level of debt servicing, given the other challenges that is currently facing the country. Coupled with this, the World Bank's projection that Nigeria's inflation rate could reach 25% in 2023 is also another problem. Now, this comes as a blow to the country's struggling economy, and many have called for the government to take proactive measures to address these issues. Now, joining me to look at this is Muhktar Mohammed, a financial analyst and CEO at Asheer Dynamic Solutions. It's glad to have you join us, Muhktar, once again on the show.
Morning.
Now, what do you make of the world projection, that is the World Bank's projection, that inflation may hit 25% in 2023 as a result of the petrol subsidy removal, and how dire is it for the Nigerian economy?
Well, that's not surprising. And even at 25% at the end of the year, I think that's not bad from where we are now. We are almost 22%. If you're saying that we just have an increment of 3% towards the end of the year, I think it's not that bad. Like then it's not as bad as we thought it would be, because when you look at before the removal of subsidy, we're already doing 22%, we're 21%. And so the removal of subsidy was not captured. Remember, it wasn't captured in the May NBC data, so it will be captured in June. So we were thinking with the percentage move in terms of subsidy, you thought maybe you'll be 25% now, and then maybe go as high as 30% before the end of the year. So if we are doing 25%, I don't think it's that bad when you look at that PMS is the key driver of every sector in the Nigerian economy, and if that sector was hiked by almost 200%, and we maintain an inflation of 25%. For me, it's not bad.
So now that we're seeing that the fiscal and monetary authorities are being warned that inflation pressure is actually stressing the economy, we discovered that based on the different policies of government, this is resulting in the inflation rate that is set to reach about 25%. Now, aside the policy direction of the current administration, what other factors would you say are actually responsible or contributing to the projection?
Exchange rates. Exchange rate is one. It has been, exchange rate is the key driver of Nigeria inflationary pressure. I mean, exchange rate, because most of our goods and most of the services we render, or most of the goods that we import, most of the goods that are used by households in Nigeria are mostly goods that are imported into this country. And so it's definitely one of the key drivers of the Nigerian economy. And you know, the exchange rate has fluctuated. Even the parallel market is even a little bit cheaper than the government market as it stands today. So definitely that, for me, is one of the key drivers. Then cost of production, especially for local goods, has also gone high because of deficiency in infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, we're not just talking that we don't have the roads. The roads are still there. Well, how many of these roads can help move goods in the rural area to the urban area? How motorable are some of these roads? Then we also look at the key issue has to be with power. How much power do we are able to have, and in industrialized area, how many hours of power do they really have? So those are what are driving inflationary pressure in Nigeria, and those are things that cannot be addressed in a single month. Or, I mean, there has to be a strategy in place to address that. We are seeing that in the unification of the exchange rate. Just yesterday, over the weekend, the Bank of America said that the Naira, for the first time we are hearing that the Naira is under to get to like 600 and between 650 and 668, which would definitely help in bringing down those inflationary pressures. And also, we expect production of local crude to start this July. Dangote refinery, we're expecting, and also the independent marketers are saying they also have been given license to import products, and NNPC is also thinking of importing products. So all this will help in bringing down inflation in the long run.
All right. Well, are you actually concerned that looking at these factors that you've mentioned, coupled with other provisions as contained in the Finance Act, which actually comprises a slew of taxes, is actually resulting in a cost of living crisis for the populace, something that could have been avoided? What's your take?
Yeah, my take always has been that government should always look at tax as ways of growing the economy. That's what tax has become in developed economies. And that is as a result that because they have a lot of people in the tax bracket. So now what they are trying to do is to get companies to establish places for them so that they can also employ more of their younger generation to jobs. So they use tax as an incentive, especially when it comes to jobs that are attractive to the younger generation. So they tend to use tax. So, but even here in this part of the world, especially in Nigeria, the government is real need of resources of funding to do a lot of projects. So when they say they are widening the tax gap, they are already taxing the already taxed. So like now, they need to come up with creative reason of how they can get the informal sector. That woman that is selling rice on the street, that woman that have a beer parlor, that woman, that guy that has a barbing salon. How can you come to them and make them see that they have to pay tax? To see that you are helping them in the reduction of in terms of their reduction in overhead costs. They need to see that too. So for me, the way the government is thinking now, you won't blame them. Debt is on their neck. They want to hit the ground running, so they need to do all this. But I feel that we should begin to look at tax as a means of growing the economy instead of looking at it as just a means for revenue.
All right, you've talked about mitigating effects or initiatives that can come up, but then the federal government has been told to provide palliatives following the removal of the subsidy. So should palliatives surface at this time to mitigate impact? Because some people feel that, oh, it's long overdue, or, well, it's something that they missed. As a matter of fact, that their policies have been misguided, as the case may be. So even coming up with palliatives will not really solve anything. But I'd like to find out if that could, in a bit, cushion the adverse turns that Nigerians are facing now.
Yes, but palliative should be government taking a bite, because palliative should not just be government bringing it transport network. Oh, you are bringing in more transport vehicles. You are bringing it for the civil servant. Government should know that when it comes to if you increase salary, how much of the private sector will be able to increase their own staff salary? So when government is looking at palliative, they should be looking at palliative that will touch every Nigerian. I'll give you two type of palliatives that we've seen work in countries. Look at the Ghana incident. When Ghana removed subsidy on petroleum products and other products, what did they do? They begin to pay subsidy in the energy sector. That's power. They decide that each household, we are going to pay a certain amount of that. That touched everybody, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, whether you are average. So for me, government should also look at a palliative that will touch everybody. Secondly, look at the Kenya experience, which is very, very close to us, because their president did exactly what our own president is doing. Even if our own president said it wasn't in his speech, but in the Kenyan president, it was in his speech when he said if the subsidy was going to go, and subsidy was gone. And he said, you know what, I'm going to take that subsidy, push it to the industrialized people, maybe bring it to diesels, where because that is what the industries there use. But people protest and say, how many of these things did the industry import? I mean, it's also produce that we use. Most of our goods that we use are imported goods. So the government needed to take a bite. And what did they do? They reduced import duties on most of the goods that are household goods that are going to be used by majority of Kenyans. And what that result in the drastic reduction in inflation in that country. So for me, government should take a bite, and they must begin to look at palliative, especially in the area of import duty. That's going to touch every Nigerian. Then you also look at it again in the area of taxes, which is going to be very difficult, even if the Labour Congress is pushing a tax holiday for workers for maybe for the next 2 or 3 years also, so that they can get themselves right. And at that time, we must have gotten all our refineries. Boa refinery would have been up and doing. The NNPC also would have gotten their own refinery up and doing. And also Dangote refinery will be running and will be any effect. So by the time you remove that, then the pain will not be so much on the people. So for me, I think those are the type of palliative that will touch everybody that government should be looking, not just a palliative that will touch only the civil servants.
So now that you're saying this, many have actually called for the government to take proactive measures to address these issues, just as you have mentioned. And a few days ago, the president, that is Bola Tinubu, described the current situation as temporary pain for a more long-lasting gain. Now, would it mean that there is the need for Nigerians to be patient with this administration as it tries to get its acts right? Or what do you make of these kind of statements coming from the number one man in the country, talking about proactive measures to be taken by government and the kind of predisposition that you think the citizens should have? How patient, or how long do you think they should be patient before we have these policies begin to take effect and reap positive results for the country?
What is you know is that for 8 years we've been very patient. So I don't think we should expect an economy that was battered for 8 years to just recover immediately. So we need to be patient with government policies. We'll begin to see those numbers getting better maybe in the third quarter of the year or fourth quarter of this year, or we would like to say the second half of the year. But the government needs to come up with palliative fast because the people are really going through a lot. And so I agree that the people patient is getting wearied now. So government need to, after all, they are in discussion with labor told us that is going to last for 8 weeks, or we are going to see improvement within those 8 weeks. That is any decision they agree on, they will implement. But it's 2 weeks into that, we've not had, maybe they've not agreed on any decision yet. So definitely, I think I expect Nigerians to be patient. But again, patient has a timeline, especially as Nigerians concerned. But if you have been patient for 8 years, what will it cost you to be patient for the next 6 months? Because it was 8 years that we saw the exchange rate went to almost 850. And so it would be nice if we can be patient and see some of these policy turn out well for us. But again, those policies are not going to turn out well for us just based on the pronouncement that the president has to. We need to begin to see structure on ground. You've removed subsidies. Palliative is one thing. Local consumption, local production of refined petroleum product is one of it. You've unified the exchange rate. So as you have unified the exchange rate, what policy are you bringing to attract investors into the market that will also bring effects into the market, boost our reserve, and reduce the pressure on the naira, on the dollar, the naira on the dollar? And then when will our banks be able to say, look, I cannot do my business with my naira card using dollar, my naira card in a dollar transaction? So when we begin to see that, then you see that you know that the economy is going to take shape. But that also is not something that can happen overnight, because where we are now did not happen overnight. So like you said, we've been like this for years. And so you are going through it. It's like a human being. You need to have surgery 10 years ago or 12 years ago. You refuse to do it. By the time you are doing it 10 years after or 12 years after, the pain will be much compared to what would have happened 12 years ago. What decision we are supposed to have taken 10, 15 years ago, we did not take it. And so we are taking it now, and the pain is really high on the people.
All right. Now, talking about the Nigerian government spending 1.24 trillion naira to service debt in the first quarter of the year. Now, as total public debt said to have hit 49.85 trillion naira. Now, the question has always been, how can the debt portfolio be reduced? Because some people have talked about the fact that government cost has been over bloated, a lot of spendings, there's no cutting down, a lot of debts, accumulation and all that. But then we still see these monies keep piling up. So what is the problem with reducing the debt portfolio of the country?
The problem in reducing the debt portfolio of the country is because governors have not had the political will to do it. I'll just give you 2 instances. The president came in, he has appointed 20 advisors. The Speaker of the House of Representatives came in and appointed 35 advisors. So what does that tell you? Cost of governance is still very, very high.
But it still brings about effective governance. It brings about effective governance when you have the number of hands to work with you. It makes the job seamless too.
How effective has it been before now? It has not been. See, when you talk about cost of governance, let me give it this way. You are in your house, and then you know that you're not having the resources that you used to have before. Will you still be planning your life like when you have those resources? You begin to reduce a lot of things that you used to take before, because it is no more business as usual. So when things improve, then you can begin to think of how you can go back to your former stage. So the major drill of the Nigerian economy used to be fuel subsidy. We have gone the parallel market. We are dealing with that now. Then the other thing that we need to do is the cost of governance. We need to deal with the cost of governance. We need to reduce cost of governance. Where government functionary, is it effective to have 20 cars following one government functionary? Or when the president came to Lagos, you have over 50 cars in his convoy. Who's paying for those fuel? Is it government or is it Nigerians that are paying for it? So we need to look at governance. We need to reduce the cost of governance. The reduction of the cost of government would have taken care of almost 800 billion to pay off your debt.
All right, well, taking the Tinubu-led government's reforms into consideration, many have said that the unification of the exchange rate will also impact Nigeria's foreign-denominated debt, so especially with the issue of the dollar. So I'd like to find out how true is that, what is the plausibility of that, and if you think it is a good policy statement having to unify the exchange rate in the first place.
It's a good policy to unify the exchange rate because the former one was enshrined in a lot of corruption. There was no transparency. But with the unification of the exchange rate, the house market forces need to determine the price. It's a good one. Now, where does the challenge lie? The challenge lies in what you have just said. We need to attract effects into our economy. And that will not happen by just pronouncement. We need to come up with strategy to attract effects, either through diaspora remittance or foreign direct investors or portfolio investors. That is what we need to do. On our debt, definitely, especially the foreign debt, it has gone high because at that time, government fixed it at 400. Now it's about 750. That's market price. Definitely it has gone up. But again, we mustn't forget the fact that also the revenue of government will go up too because of what they will save as a result of the removal of subsidy. Just last month alone, we made to understand that government has saved 400 billion from the removal of subsidy. And the World Bank said that if we continue with this policy for the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, we would have ended up saving about 11 trillion. So these are policies that are good, but also they still need some teething, especially in unification of the exchange rate. If you want it to work, then you need to attract foreign investors into your market. You need to build your reserve because no government and no CBN anymore allows currency to float without intervention. There must be timely intervention so that your currency is not battered. So you must intervene timely. And when we talk about timely intervention, it's injection of liquidity into the system to stabilize the price. That is what that's what I think they should do.
All right, so just as you have itemized a few things that you feel the government can do, I'd like to wrap this conversation up with this. Is there hope that Nigeria's economy will get out of its tightness and stranglehold probably in the next few months or years?
Or years, for months, I don't know. Like I said, by half of this year, we'll begin to see what will happen. We're waiting for the president cabinet. When his cabinet comes into place, we've already know his policy. His policy is going to be a purely capitalist policy. His policy, economic policy, will be driven by the private sector. We already know that. But who is going to be this Minister of Finance and all that? That's also a key determinant factor of how long will we wait for we to see economic prosperity in Nigeria. But from where I'm sitting now, from what they have done, I don't think it will be long before we begin to enjoy economic prosperity.
All right, that is high hopes for Nigerians there coming from Muhktar. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.
My pleasure, thank you.
Yes, so as Nigeria looks towards the future, well, many are hoping that the government will take the necessary steps to address inflation before it spirals out of control. And the World Bank's recent projection serves as a wake-up call for policymakers and, of course, the public alike, highlighting the need for urgent actions to ensure Nigeria's economic stability becomes visionary and, of course, sacrosanct. So we go on a short break, and when we return to the time for international business stories, do stay with us.